This is our part 3 and final deep dive into Kriesleriana. So we should probably just backtrack for a second and talk about, our basic point of all this, right? Our kind of way forward. We're always trying to look for what creates narrative in music, what unifies a piece together. Especially a piece like this, 8 movements long, half an hour, no defined forms of each movement. Hey, welcome.
You doing?
Hey,
what's up, Robin?
Literally just started. Good morning. So, one way to talk about this, I tell a lot of my composition students this. When you're writing a piece, it's not just that you're writing a piece. What do you have to do? You have to create an entire world, and then you have to situate your piece inside that world, right? When you read a novel, you immediately have to know what the setting is, right? What's the time period? What's the basic gist? What's the relationships that are expected vis-a-vis the relationships that are unexpected? Between the characters and the environment, the characters and the characters, all these different things. And in music, it's one of the hardest things to do on that level, right? Especially when non-texted music starts to become what we know it to be today, right? Which is early Baroque-ish, mid-Baroque-ish, when that starts to take hold. With the advent of the forebears of the piano and all those type of things. Composers have to try to find a way to create narrative, to create structure, create characters, and to create this world that they inhibit while not having text at their disposal, right? So we've talked about in our earlier seminars a various number of ways of doing this, especially from a contrapuntal point of view, right? One of our favorite things to discuss, as we all know, is contrapuntal motive. The idea that an entire structure can be built with the same materials rather than with a variety of materials. Right? Remember my favorite analogy about this with the cathedral? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've heard it enough times. I won't. But contrapuntal motives are not like compositional motives. Compositional motives are on the surface level gestures, right? That are very memorable. They're very catchy. When we hear it, we know what's coming on stage, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to take away from that. But that is a surface level motive. Right? A contrapuntal motive, of course, is the design that's on the inside. The little building blocks of music that you'll probably never hear and probably won't be brought to the fore. But if they're consistent, they create the setting for which the piece can exist in. Now, on top of that, our big topic with this piece is to talk about meta-contrapuntal devices. So that's even a whole other level, right? And of course, this concept draws from the fact that we can have a contrapuntal relationship that defines every phrase of the piece, giving it an extra, higher level of unity. Right? Because unity is always what we're after. And you have to remember that all music before the modern era or just the pre-modern era strive to have a unified idea, a unified narrative, let's say. Right? The very idea of modernism is to juxtapose two things that are not related to one another. Right? See cross-cutting techniques in Stravinsky for a classic example of early modernist idea. Let's place A against B, and they have no relationship to one, and you compare the two because of that. Wow, right? But before that idea, before that concept arose, the idea was that everything should be smooth flowing from left to right, from beginning to end, and should make one story or one arc. That's why the sonata is the form that still exists today. Despite all of what we've gone through, people are still writing them, right? Because it's one of the easiest standard ways to manipulate the structure of music in a narrative arc, right? Okay, so back to Schumann. What's one of the many fascinating things about this piece, of course, is that we have 8 movements, completely varied timings of each one, right? Remember, the first movement's under 2 minutes, the second one is 9 minutes long, right? They seem to have very little in common on the surface. And of course, you have to realize how revolutionary this was at the time for someone like Schumann. Writing a piece like this, a narrative piece with a title, Kriesleriana, what does that even mean, right? The world of Chrysler. Of course, the E.T.A. Hoffmann character. But how are you going to represent that with a solo piano piece, right? I mean, this was the age where composers first started doing this, right? Where the programmatic element came into the aspect of music which is normally non-programmatic, i.e. solo piano works, or chamber music, right? Meaning, i.e. music without singers. So, we talked about the contrapuntal motive. Remember what it is in this piece? Fixed contrapuntal motive of?
La Si.
La Si, right? Always half step, right? And fixed in that position, no matter where it is. It's not a metrically fixed contrapuntal motive. It's a fixed tone contrapuntal motive. All right, so that radiates through the piece and is very consistent. And our meta-contrapuntal design element?
Parallel.
The parallel,
yeah.
Exactly. right? Remember, we linked this design element, parallel octave, to the story of Chrysler himself, right? This is a hyper-romantic character, right? In the sense, you know, the capital R romantic, where there's only two states of being. There's like ecstasy and manic depression. Like there's nothing else. And so it makes sense when you consider what the parallel octave does. At the height of every phrase, when we're building to the climax of the phrase itself, the parallel octave destroys the sonority at the apex of it, and we fall back down to the end of the phrase. Every single phrase in this piece does this. It's absolutely fascinating, right? How consistent this meta-contrapuntal design is. And that goes hand in hand with what you'd expect the character to be, and thus is a good representation of how to show this quality of this character without text, without anything, except the notes and rhythms themselves.
Yeah, just a quick question. I remember we kind of addressed this, but in those cases where the sonority falls apart and the sonority is destroyed by the parallel octave, are there like obvious ways out that in most of the cases, and you like I remember discussing like that there were 2-3 ways that he could have avoided using parallel octaves, but he clearly opted for that.
Exactly, that's the key, right? It's not that the octaves have been forced by some, you know, hypermetric concern or something like that. It's that they actually have been written into and accentuated by the markings themselves. You know, the super obsessive markings of Schumann. Nobody writes 3 crescendos in a row with forte, forte, forte on each one, except Schumann, right? So, you know, he's kind of telling you exactly what he wants you to do. This is not the vague markings of Mendelssohn or Chopin, right? These are the hyper-specific, like, do what's on the page, buddy, which Debussy would later, of course, become the master of. You know, my old teacher, Dr. Lasser, always used to say, you know, when people ask me, how do you interpret Debussy? I'm like, can you read a score? There's nothing to interpret. He tells you everything to do.
Don't forget Elgar.
Oh, that's a good point. Elgar is the great marker of everything. Couldn't leave one pitch alone. I had to put an accent articulation on it. Anyway, so in our past two, we worked somehow all the way through the third movement. So I want to start with the fourth movement today. Spend a lot of time there, and then I'm probably going to make the big time jump towards the end, since of course we do have to eventually talk about other music. Although I literally could talk about this piece for 8 sessions. So let's get to the fourth movement. You okay over there?
Not really.
Wine opening difficulties, excuse me.
Is that the one 8966?
What's it?
Yes. Yeah.
Crisis averted. There's wine open. So, all right, shall we play through this? So this is the fourth movement of 8, right? So we're kind of at the first point here where he's going to stop and give you a slow movement, right? Think about it. We've had the super fast opening movement, the varied form of the second movement, and then this hyper-panicked third movement with a huge dramatic ending. So now we're going to take a step back, and he's going to give you an exquisite slow movement. Here we are. What a movement that is, right? So much to discuss. Let me start with this. When I play the very first chord of this piece, you should know something's very, very up. This is the dominant seventh chord, yes? That's what it sounds like, it's what it is. However, you know how much of a stickler I am about doublings and spacings. What's wrong with this chord? Wrong, quote unquote. Yeah, the leading tone is doubled. You got 5 voices, and the one pitch that you really, really, really shouldn't double is the one that's being doubled, right? You never double a member of the tritone in a diminished chord or in a dominant seventh. You definitely never double the leading tone. And why? It's not just like a theory rule because like somebody said so. What's the problem? Well, you can't get out of it, right? No.
To resolve the parallel.
Exactly. You're going to have octaves to resolve it. And on top of that, if you remember the concept of spacing and how it works, doubling and how it works, right? By doubling that pitch, that makes all of the pitches around it want to gravitate towards it, which is the opposite of what you want to do in the dominant seventh chord. You should try to make everything gravitate towards the dominant. But given the super weak position, right, the 4-3 position, and the double leading tone, the very first thing you hear, you should feel like very uneasy about that. Now, let's follow the octaves as they happen. And by the way, also contrapuntal motive, of course, lost C flat right off the bat. When he moves up, it's interesting, right? By holding the Mi flat and not resolving, you have this sense of suspension that, you know, you're not exactly sure which key we're going to land in. Which is odd for something that sure looks like Roman numeral-wise should be 5-1. Don't get me started on why you should never use Roman numerals. This would be a good example of why. You write 5 and 1 here, it's like you missed the point. Right? That's not what it is at all. Listen to what happens to those octaves. So La, Si, and right away.
Triple. The bass.
Exactly. Right? And notice, if the top pitch had left up, and shouldn't both of them do it? Meaning here. Well, that would be just straight up piano octaves. That's not parallel octaves, that's just weirdo piano octaves. We can deal with that. But the fact that they split apart and he writes a hairpin crescendo right there, it's very odd. Then they go back to being parallel, and then they split. And by the time we get here, we're on the correct dominant seventh note. Isn't that lovely? So again, are they going to be octaves? Are they not? You just like can't decide. They come in and out of it. And that is our meta-contrapuntal device, right? Because we're like sucking the sonority out from what should otherwise be lovely chords. We're just deliberately making them weak by doing it. By taking the sonority of a simple triad and actually just kind of wrenching it. Now, we've had that pedal B flat the whole time through this passage, right? And so it's got to go to freaking Ray for us to feel like we can finally get out of this. And what does he do? He finally does do it, but... ninth chord is such a winner, isn't it? Right? Because as soon as we had the resolution that we long desired here, our leading tone did not do what it was supposed to do. Right? It chroma moved from La to La flat, and thus shifted you into E flat.
Mm.
Then we kind of have the same pattern here. Only Schumann would write these 4 grace notes, right? Now, one of the other elements that we haven't really talked about very much with this piece, although I really should have, because we could, again, restart, it's just to talk about metrics, right? Schumann is so careful with his metrics. To me, this is why he's a composer's composer. The average person listening to this believes, I really think that when you start this piece, that's the downbeat. And if you play that forward in time, when the passage that I just played right there, meaning this, you would believe that this is now the downbeat. Remember, we're looking at the scores because we're dorky composer-y people. But the average person in the audience has no idea. And it really feels like, first of all, with the resolution of that half cadence, and the fact that we've been an 8th note off the entire time, they don't know that. This feels like the downbeat. So I would ask you then, where is the first time Schumann actually gives us the real downbeat? How long can he keep the syncopation going? To me, it almost happens on measure 8.
69.
What's that?
At the coordinate 69, the next part.
Well, by the time we get to there, certainly. But to me, there's one possibility and one certainty. Now, when I say gives you a downbeat, what do I mean? I mean that everything coalesces in a cadence with no extraneous pitches that are pushing us over the downbeat, meaning we land on the downbeat and feel solid, like we can end
bar
it.
8.
Bar 8 looks like the first one, exactly. Right? So all the syncopation's coming up from there. Let me go on from where I started. Stop, I mean. Now, only Schumann will give you this. That's a heck of a chord right there. He's pedaling the soul and giving you the leading tone of the other voice. So again, all of this is still off the beat. That feels like it should have been the downbeat. Again, because we're still an 8th note behind. But again, with that incredible little, I don't know what you want to call that, excuse for a half cadence. Should have been a half cadence. Instead, we'd go to the diminished. Same thing here. We had another chance right there to make you feel like that could have been a solid downbeat. But of course, you know we're looking at the score. That can't be. Great Neapolitan here. And you think, oh, it's going to happen. Yes, but then immediately. Classic question. Is that a half cadence or a full cadence? Right? It would seem to the average, student of theory that that's a full perfect authentic cadence in Fa, right? You have a Neapolitan, you have a dominant right before it, you land on Fa with a pickety third. But yet that pickety third makes you just wonder if that's not a dominant. That's the power of the overtone series, which we've talked about before. I want to play that passage, and instead of the A natural, like we're on that downbeat, I want to play an A flat. Okay, so here we go. Done. That's it. That's the downbeat. That's the perfect authentic. We're in F minor. Everybody's happy. But by doing this at the very end, what do you think? You can already hear it. You can already hear it. You're not in the key. Right? Now, of course, the master of fooling you of which chord is the tonic and which chord is the dominant is Chopin, right? And this piece was definitely written after the famous mazurka that Chopin totally tricks you with. Remember this one? Oh, sorry. 13th mazurka. Whichever chord I stop on feels like the tonic. Tonic. Or tonic. And so you can never know, right? It's because the spacings are so subtle, you can't tell if it's 4-1 or if it's 5-1. You can never tell, and it can go on forever like that. Same thing happens here, right? By giving us the pickety at the very end, you're like, well, I don't know. I don't know. I can't decide. And so it's not a real downbeat, because again, it's not a hypermetric downbeat because we don't feel like we've settled the key yet. And that's why the second beat feels like, that's not a surprise. It's not a surprise at all. And that throws us, of course, back. How about the grace note right here, by the way? How lovely is that? Again, only one composer will do this. I mean, Brahms will never do anything like this. And I love Brahms, he's awesome. But he would never be so weird as to give you a half-step grace note on a parallel octave. Okay, then you repeat. And there's another surprise. Again, we're still that eighth note off, right? So we believe, as the audience member, that the second eighth note of the bar is the downbeat. So this is another fake cadence, in essence, which should be a perfect authentic, or at least imperfect authentic can do. Instead, he gives us to what we'd assume would be 5 of 6. But then, he does. Now we're kind of not sure. You know, are we going to G minor? Perhaps. But he starts taking the dominant nature out of this, right? And by letting the other pitches go, maybe that's the dominant? I don't know. Oh. That is the tonic the whole time, wasn't it? That is the key, B flat. And that is the first time we get an actual downbeat. It's on the downbeat, and it's as solid as we're going to get. Now, above that, we have all these hanging pitches. Exactly, because it makes that chord feel like a dominant, and it pushes us forward. It's the magic of the picking third. It's a really weird thing because it has this double meaning. You know, on one hand, it feels more stable, and on the other hand, it feels unstable, and you can't really decide. Now, there's one other kind of cool topic to discuss right here, which will manifest itself more in Wagner and other composers to come after this. The longer you hold a dominant seventh chord, the less we want to move, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? You would think like the dominant seventh chord is the height of the tonal phrase, the height of the tonal sentence, and its whole job is to collapse back to 1 or move to 6, right? It's an entire job. But as maybe Schumann knew from playing the first Chopin Nocturne, remember this very famous passage of where the dominant seventh is prolonged and prolonged and prolonged, and eventually you have a simplified version of it. And the longer it goes, you're like, I guess we're just cool being there. I don't know. We're not going anywhere. So let's just, you know, did we change key? Did we modulate? What happened? Right? You have to remember, with modulation, I always say this, your ears are about 10 billion times faster than your brain, unless you are very well trained, right? And then they can kind of get closer to one another. So modulation happens, your ear is like locked in and noticed and completely rearranges all 7 diatonic pitches in an instant. Your brain might have to be like, oh wait, yeah, now that we're in E flat, so okay, that's dominant and that's the leading tone. Okay, yeah, I got it. But your brain is instantly there. Modulation affects you without you needing to be a participant, right? It just happens. Because your ears are so attuned to understanding the tendency of pitch, the will of the pitch, vis-a-vis what pitch is the tonic. So that makes this a little funny, isn't it? Because when we arrive on that clearly secondary dominant on this half cadence, and we so much want to go to, right? But the longer we do this, well, maybe I'm okay just being there. Maybe that's, is that tonic? Can I just stop? Yes. But then he does. That is super, super creepifying, if you ask me. It's very frightening, right? Because that is the tonic we've wanted the entire time, but nobody else is supporting it now. The hanging pitches are right there, unresolved, and even the F sharp being out of the key, right? But you have the evidence on your side that that was actually the downbeat. So that does feel right too, which is it. We don't know. These are the questions that prompt one to want to go on and have a B section to the piece. You know what I mean? Because we end right there, and it's just a sort of a question mark. Right? Now, you can say this is moving forward, we got 4 more to go, maybe you want to end one on a question mark. Yeah, that's a possibility. But not so.
Would you say that displacing the downbeat how it started in the very beginning is maybe a meta.
You know, that's interesting. You know, I think that could be, to be sure. And I can point you to a few other Schumann pieces where that's definitely, you know, the name of the game. Look at the fourth piece from David's Bundedance of Opus 6. That's definitely the name of the game there. But I don't know. I mean, this one to me, it's this very subtle syncopation. That's what this really is, you know. Think about this. If we start on the second eighth note of something, and we end up ending the entire thing on the second eighth note of something, well, then you just wrote it wrong. Right? You can syncopate on the page all you want, but if it doesn't work in the ear, it doesn't exist. Right? Always when we analyze, you have to remember that music is not this page of music we're looking at. Right? It's what's in the ear, it's what's perceived. And it can only be done in one direction. Right? My stereotypic idea of bad analysis is when people point to something and, like, you know, measure 2 and like, oh, this predicts like measure 185. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Okay, we haven't got. There's a lot between that point and this point. You can't just pick random things that are on the score that you see. You can only go by what the notes and rhythms actually tell you. Okay. Now, in the B section of this, the syncopation does continue because, of course, he starts it off the beat. Oh, by the way, before I just go on, that measure with the lone B flat with the fermata on it, plus another quarter rest with the fermata on it, and then another quarter rest with the fermata on it. Again, nobody does that except this guy. What does that even mean? How can you have 2 fermatas in a row with rests?
Why?
Like the average human will put 1 fermata on a half rest and call it a day. Only Schumann. As if to say, like, no, wait. No rush here.
He also only has 2 on the top at 3.
Yeah, it doesn't make any
Oh,
sense,
yeah.
right? You're right. It makes no sense. And
Well, what doesn't make any sense is that he could have just written a half note on the bass.
yeah, exactly.
really.
It would have made absolutely no difference, right? and so, but the only thing that, and I don't know the reason for this because that seems crazy to me. But when you start the next phrase with all of that untimed music, untimed space, when you start this, you feel like that's definitely a downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no doubt.
Unless you know Schumann.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you do it all the time.
Have really good ears.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I mean, and I also think if you're a fine, better pianist than I, you may be able to play it that way and go. Right? It's subtle, but at least try to show that this is a pickup. 4, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I think you should try to do that. But nonetheless, it's ambiguous. Now, this passage of music I absolutely adore. This is, you know, Schumann at his best, showing you his third species counterpoint skills, right? With the 2 first species, top and bottom, and the fourth in the alto. This is kind of like his go-to. What's Schumann texturally really well known for? Having the first species between the soprano and the bass, and they're both great. They're both excellent. I would point you, and there's a million examples of this, but if you want kind of my favorite example, in the quintet, the second movement, the Funeral March, B section, has one of the great first species between violin 1 and cello, going through the entire thing with the fast-moving, you know, accompaniment species in the middle. It's just a home run knockout texture. So he's got that going on, so you could just play that. That's the classic Schumann counterpoint that I'm talking about. Now, did you hear the Meta-Counterpoint device as you went through this? It's pretty. The first time it's a little sneaky, and the second time it is not sneaky at all. So again, where's the first height of the phrase? Just follow the crescendos. Okay. So you see the third measure of this with the 2 crescendos? Start from there. You suspend over the law, and there's the contrapuntal motive, law C flat, vertically, right? And follow those voices. 2 things happen here. First of all, the E flat makes that a deceptive cadence, which is very skillful, by the way. This should have been red, right? It should have been. That's the 5-1, right? But this is 5-6. So you hear La flat in the tenor, and then Sol, Fa, Fa. Those are offset parallel octaves. So if I forget the 16th notes, I'm just going to play the stemmed pitches, the other stem pitches. extremely close to being parallel octaves. If you'd written that in a species exercise, it'd be like, yeah, hidden parallel octaves, right? But it's like on the borderline of what's possible. But still, height of the phrase drops it out, right? And it gives you the very innocent 5-1 finally. Okay, second phrase is going to show you.
Third beat.
Oh yeah, of course, on the third beat. So we're still not on the down beat. Right? Next phrase. Right here. Comes to the same position again, lost C flat. But this time, follow the tenor and the soprano. In isolation, parallel octaves, top of the phrase. See how chilling that effect is? Right? It feels like a mistake happening. Right? It really does. Sorry. Love that. And notice, right after that passage where we're totally freaked out, do we use that as that's a dominant seventh, right? A secondary dominant, we should be going to G minor. He just totally ignores it, starts over. Which, by the way, that's another technique that he never gets credit for. The real like hypermetric shift, where you work your way into one phrase and you're like, oh my god, like what's the ramification of this phrase? And all of a sudden it's like, just restart. You're left like feeling like a little scared. Like, should I be enjoying this tonic? We didn't earn it contrapuntally. That's weird. You say repeats. Here's, you can tell this is the closing. Feels like the downbeat, it's not the downbeat. And isn't even the right chord. Love that. See how he writes actually the word pedal under it? Here's something you couldn't do pre-Romantic era, right? You can't hold that low C in your hand and play the rest of this, right? So you have to actually like physically try to blur the pedal, half pedal here. Blur the two chords together slightly to hold the low C. If he had had the middle pedal, he could have used that, but he didn't have the middle pedal at this point. One of the rare instances where the middle pedal might actually be useful in piece of music. I feel like, you know, of the hundreds and hundreds of concerts I've ever played, I've only found one time I've ever used it and it was worthwhile. One time. Why is it on every piano? It's like, it's a waste. Anyway. And by the way, it wasn't Schumann. It's in Dish Levi. Now, talk about being rhythmically off the beat. You have a grace note here, and now you have a grace note to the downbeat while nothing else is moving, and it's tied, so you just go. But where's that pitch?
And it's supposed to be slower.
Yeah, it's supposed to be slower, right? So he's got ritardando, he's got a grace note tied over to, and nothing else happening on the downbeat. So where the hell is that pitch? I mean, it's literally nowhere. Like, what would be the difference if you didn't have that grace note and you just had said, we'll play the F on the downbeat?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Almost nothing, right? But I think he's showing you graphically, he's like, just make us feel like we are completely out of time here for a second, right? And it's a long hold, right? Because that dotted quarter note in the slow tempo is very slow. And then all of a sudden, you're like, ah, okay. There's another detail here which, again, you know, I can't solve every, I can't answer every question. Notice here he ties the high B flat and the soprano when he leaps up to the re. You see that in your score? Mm-hmm. If you look at the very first measure, that's the exact same passage. He did not do that right there. And I don't know why. Yeah, this is a tiny detail, but you see right there at that moment, this is measure 24, the Ursus tempo. He ties over the B flat and double stems it, right? When he reaches up to the re. The very first measure of the piece, it's the same exact music. He doesn't do that. So, I guess it's as good as mine. It's really odd. Meaning he wants you to actually hold the pitch, which means you have to like actually, you know, see on my score it says 4-3 with a little thing on the fingering. So you'd have to, because you're going to play that, and you have to switch your finger to hold and grab the pitch. It's real fussy. So why?
It's like organ music.
Yeah, it is. It feels like organ music. You got to double finger notes and move your hand around. Weird. I don't have an answer for that one. Sorry. Okay, then he repeats. As he moves down, notice another little tiny detail. See the C flats that are being pedaled? Notice where they are. They're all offsets. So the downbeat right there. I love that.
You say C flat, you can B flat.
The C flat and B flat. Yeah, right. Sorry, it takes a while to use my fix down.
Yeah, I'm really confused.
Sorry.
Also C flat.
There's no movable dough in this house. I had to teach at an institution which made me use it for 8 years. I'm never doing it again.
And that's right.
Yes, that's right.
Who's that?
Westminster Bar
Oh,
College.
yeah.
Also, Repertoire.
Right. Exactly. I got it. My very first semester teaching there. Nobody told me that this was a movable dough school. So I taught for the first 6 weeks. I was teaching like a theory 3 class in fixed dough, and of course the students are like, they don't know. Nobody said anything to me until about week 6. I got a very pointed email from the head of
Wow.
saying like, if you keep doing that, you're gonna need to teach somewhere else. I was like, nobody even told me.
At music school.
Yeah, right.
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy? When I was at Eastman,
Mhm.
we didn't even use solfege.
You did the numbers?
We used the numbers.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
Yeah, yep.
I got in an orchestra in Europe.
Yeah.
And I had to learn.
Yeah, you have to learn fixed dough. We did
Yeah,
right
exactly.
now. We are the only country on earth that does this silly system. So in any case, at the end of this guy, there's only one thing I want to say about the very end of this. The adagio there, if you look at my score has a first version and a second version. Schumann revised this and changed it. Schumann's one of the very few people that when he revised things, it actually got better. Chopin, usually you prefer to take the first edition. Brahms, maybe you take the second. I don't know. But this Neapolitan progression at the end, there's so much cross-pollination between Schumann and Chopin. Don't forget that this piece is dedicated to Chopin. Okay? It says it on the first page of the score. So to me, there's another Chopin reference right here, and this is kind of obscure. Do you know the 6th nocturne, G minor? It's never played. It's a very weird piece.
Is that the Hamlet one?
Exactly. Yeah. That's the very famous one that Chopin wrote in the manuscript at the end after a performance of Hamlet. And his publisher asked him, is that the title, or why do you want it at the end of the piece? Like, what, do you want to title a piece? And he very famously wrote back to them and said, let them figure it out for themselves. So that, to me, is possibly a reason why Debussy, of course, did the same thing as Preludes, right? Debussy made a complete edition of Chopin's music, right, for Durand. So the Durand Chopin is edited by Debussy, right? And, of course, so Debussy knew that story. So it's interesting when you see, of course, Debussy's Preludes, it says number 1 at the top in the whole piece, and at the end it says, don't choose the death. Right? So that's exactly what Chopin did first. It's very interesting. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Now, the ending of that nocturne is extremely bizarre, and it ends similarly in that same position with a low D major. Right? That nocturne, the 6th one, is the only one that doesn't follow the nocturne form. It's A, B, C, like stream of consciousness. It's very bizarre. The final section, the C section, is all chordal, and has the marking quasi-religioso over the end, which is the only time you ever use that marking. It's a very strange piece of music, and it's also the last of the 3 nocturnes of that set, so it finishes the opus, right? All kinds of weird stuff about that piece.
It's a 6 nocturne.
It's a 6th nocturne, right? Because 4, 5, and 6 are a set. F major, F sharp major, and G minor. Anyway, to me, like, this ending here is very much a little reference to that ending of that nocturne. In any case. Okay, now, this is where if we had gone like we have our last 2 sessions, I'd go into movement 5 and break that whole down for you, and measure 6. But we have to finish this damn thing. So I challenge you to go find them yourself. You'll see the contrapuntos and the octaves all over the place in these movements. But I want to skip to actually the end of movement 7. Believe it or not, we're going to skip about 15 minutes in time. The way the form of this works, movement 7 is very highly agitato movement. It's probably the most difficult to play. And at the end of it is a chorale. The 8th movement is almost like the finale from the Chopin Second Sonata, where it's like just a little epilogue that's very light and just kind of floats off. So the real true like ending of the piece is the end of the seventh movement. The eighth is like an epilogue. And you can tell that for a couple of reasons. First of all, he decides, very interestingly, to end the seventh movement with a chorale, as if this were a cantata, which is interesting, right? I mean, why does Bach end most of the cantatas with a chorale?
Kind of sum it up.
It does. It sums it up perfectly, right? Sometimes it gives you some of the cantus firmus material that the other movements were based on. Sometimes it takes all the contrapuntal motive stuff and just throws it right into one concentrated burst at the end. And the idea that you have all these different movements, and the final movement, they all come together, and everybody is singing basically in homophony, basically, is very powerful, right? It's because the orchestra and the choir are playing together. Like, it's just feels good. It feels good to have a chorale at the end of your cantata. Just feels right. Anyway, so he decides basically to end this piece the exact same way, knowing, as you do, that the eighth movement is just this little epilogue that this, doesn't ever make a big fuss. So I want to play you that chorale, and I think right away when I do, you'll see the kind of apotheosis of these two ideas: contrapuntal motive, meta-contrapuntal motive. Here we go.
So
Everybody
where?
that's at the,
So we're starting measure.
piano.
Yeah, it's measure. Pick up the measure 89.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says etwas langsam.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, okay. So here we go. That's the chord. How about that? And a 6/4 chord. I mean, it's just insane. You know, I would never think to do that. Lovely. Okay. So hopefully you heard it loud and clear, right? Because now, from all the things that I believe were kind of in the background and the ethos there, in the design, are now in the foreground, right? And that's the key to why a chorale is so powerful. All the things that you kind of had subconsciously going on are now like presented to you. So right away, what do you see? There's our famous chord we were talking about earlier with the double leading tone, La, and parallel octave. On the motive itself, La, Si, which started the piece. Well, so many, 25 minutes ago. Right? And repeat it. Okay, now, compare these two phrases, that, and now this. What a bizarre sonority that is. Just the raw octaves there. As opposed to the last time with the full sonority. Now, it was like the bottom just dropped out of that, right? Because voices literally just disappeared. Same thing we've been talking about. And my favorite moment of this whole damn piece, right here. Now look at that for a second and really think about what the hell that is, okay? That is an amazing sonority, all right? You would think, kind of going with my old teacher Bonnet's philosophy of like two people trying to sit on a bus seat at the same time, right? That this is a real problem. It's super awkward because the A should be trying to go to B flat, but it can't because the B flat's already sitting in the seat, right? So you got a problem. It should be going down to sol. It doesn't do that. Instead, it just exists as it is. Right? So you get right there that the chord before, the La, and the chord before should have gone up to C. And it does. But at the same time, it also stays. And so you get the most violent, I think, presentation of the contrapuntal mode of Law C that you have this entire piece.
Hmm.
And holding it there on the downbeat with the rest after it, very powerful. You gotta imagine them when he first sent this to the publisher, they were like, that's a typo, right? Just look at it, it looks wrong.
Sure.
Right? Not only the 9/8 suspension in the alto, but the bass and splitting like that. It's fascinating. Right? And then he wraps it up. And what a position for that 2 chord, right? And again, all the way back down to just the raw octave. Then right here, I find this absolutely magical. Without doing anything, you hear how modulation's occurring? That's what I was talking about before. That feels like tonic, right? I mean, it couldn't feel more tonic if we just went 5/1 per rhythm in cadence. But the longer I listen to it, I'm like, could it be a dominant? Yeah, here, it just happened. It's fascinating. It's the modulation there with just using actual time, like real time. Not anything else. No pitches, no rhythms, no nothing. Just the longer you listen to it, that's why it says pedal there, right? And you're like, now I want to go to. That's what he does. That's the transposition of the beginning. Okay, this is new. That's pretty forte there, probably, and then the piano. And then, to me, the final little touch right here. For the last time. That's a great step. Isn't that great?
Oh, that's incredible.
One more time.
Wow.
That's a stroke of genius right there. Right? Because you think about it, I mean, that's a E flat dominant 7 chord going to a G minor chord. It's odd. If I do it without the grace note, it's not a common motion. It should be. But that little grace note smooths it all out for you. And it happens to be the contrapuntal motive. In the original position of the piece. And then, of course, he wraps it up. I love these flagels at the end. And then to do, for the last time, all octaves. You just hear the raw octave. A magical ending.
Well, you also got the E flat below E flat is kind of heavy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. And so he relies on that. Knows that you're not going to quite hear it as a root position chord, but you kind of will.
Right.
But you kind of will.
Yeah.
And that's great. Because as I'm always trying to say, you know, when you create something that leaves you in this gray area between like knowing exactly what's happening and knowing not exactly what's happening, you're great. If you go to full random, you get nervous. If you go to fully aware, you get bored. Right? So you got to find that happy medium. And I think Schumann is an expert at that, obviously. So, yeah, how about that?
Awesome.
Pretty nuts, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, I encourage you to go and look at the other movements that we didn't get a chance to look at because they're equally rewarding, trust me. But, you know, now that you have this, you can go and use this as a tool and search for it in other pieces, you know? You can find whatever piece you feel has a type of like unity or single thread moving through it. Hopefully you have like another tool in your analysis toolbox to say like, maybe I can put this to use.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that not every piece will any of these techniques work for. That's why you need as many as possible, right? But this is hopefully one that you can put to benefit. So, any questions or any thoughts or anything? Great.
Any.
Thank you. Well, thanks, you guys. I really appreciate it. Glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, people on the internet.